In Helldivers 2, the Galactic War has been going on for 1 year, 6 months, and 15 days at the time of making this video. In Helldivers 1, however, the longest the Galactic War ever went on was 67 days. So what happened after those 67 days? Was there finally peace in the galaxy? Did Helldivers 1's gameplay suddenly change from a top-down horde shooter to Stardew Valley? As most people know, Helldivers 1 had a cyclical campaign. Every few weeks, the Helldivers would either win or lose the Galactic War. Then the campaign would reset, and the Helldivers would start fresh with a new war. Now for the real question. What happens when Helldivers 2's Galactic War ends? Maybe the question to ask first is, will the Helldivers 2 Galactic War end? Currently, it doesn't look like developers have any plan of letting that happen. It looked like we got close to losing during the invasion of Super Earth, but it's hard not to see that as a scripted event meant to seem dire. The Helldivers wiped the automatons from the map once and the Illuminate from the map multiple times, but both factions returned regardless. With the Helldivers 2 Galactic War being at what is essentially a stalemate for the better part of 2 years, it's hard to feel like the players have any real agency over what happens beyond major orders. Even with major orders, it seems like regardless of whether the player base wins or fails, there is no significant impact. Maybe that's the point, and it's just going over my head. Maybe
War never changes.
If that is the case, I'd have to say it's a downgrade from Helldivers 1. There have been some really cool moments during Helldivers 2's Galactic War that wouldn't have been possible with Helldivers 1's cyclical campaign, such as the Terminid control system, which spiraled into a weaponized black hole heading for Super Earth, and the sudden re-emergence of the Illuminate. All of that was really cool and exciting to be a part of. That being said, the occasional exciting plotline just isn't as good as actual player agency, in my opinion. And it's less sustainable. Helldivers 1 still has Galactic Wars to this day, over a decade since its release. I'm not sure its servers will last too much longer, but the game still functions as intended. If Helldivers 2 suddenly stopped getting managed by its developers, the game wouldn't work. With how its Galactic War works, Helldivers 2 needs constant support and attention. It's yet to be seen if Helldivers 2 will ever graduate from its scripted campaign into a cyclical one. All I can do is hope and speculate. So what would a non-scripted, cyclical campaign look like within Helldivers 2? If we are to ever get a cyclical campaign in Helldivers 2, I think it would make sense if it came after the current scripted campaign ends. I'm not sure when the current campaign will end, or even if it will end, and I'm not going to speculate on what is next for this current campaign. For the purposes of this video, let's assume the current campaign ended and a new cyclical campaign is beginning. The first thing I'd like to address is the narrative. If a cyclical campaign is implemented and the events of the scripted campaign are reset, does that mean the scripted campaign is no longer canon, or that its events have been overwritten? I don't think so. I think the scripted campaign will always be the canon narrative of Helldivers 2, while each cyclical campaign would be an alternate timeline diverging from the canon narrative at the point just before the Second Galactic War begins. There would also be some key differences regarding the narrative at the start of each cyclical campaign. The biggest thing would be that the Illuminate came out of hiding immediately upon the Galactic War's commencement. That way, all 3 factions are present at the start of the campaign. Because the events of the scripted campaign haven't happened in this Galactic War yet, the Meridia singularity would just be Meridia again, and every planet it destroyed would be restored as well. Any other content introduced through the scripted campaign's narrative, such as enemies, enemy sub-factions, stratagems, weapons, and of course war bonds, would all exist right out of the gate. Now, how would a cyclical campaign within Helldivers 2 actually work? Well, it would work the same as Helldivers 1's campaign. That's it.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
I'm not entirely kidding, the system worked pretty well in Helldivers 1, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like the first game, Helldivers 2's cyclical campaign could last for an average of 30 real-world days. This isn't a hard time constraint. Depending on the events of a campaign cycle, the war could last for significantly more or less time. It would ultimately be up to player involvement. At the beginning of each campaign cycle, each faction would have a presence in every sector besides those directly adjacent to Super-Earth. A campaign cycle would only end when every enemy faction is wiped off the map, or if Super-Earth falls. The resistance and aggression of each faction should start relatively weak and gradually increase as the campaign cycle goes on. This way, if players coordinate well early on in the Galactic War, they can get off to a great start, but if they falter or aren't productive enough, the Galactic War will only become more challenging. This increase in challenge should cap off at a certain point to prevent lengthy campaigns from completely snowballing in the enemy's favor. Sectors closest to Super-Earth should be easiest to capture and be progressively more resistant to liberation the further from Super-Earth that they are. For the most part, this is very similar to Helldivers 1, but I do have several ideas to really shake things up. To start, I'm going to talk about sub-factions, something new that came with Helldivers 2. Right now, sub-factions pop up wherever the developers want them to, so for a cyclical campaign, this would have to change. My solution is to give each sub-faction at least one origin planet. For each sector neighboring an origin planet's sector, one planet could be occupied by that sub-faction, possibly including an additional planet within the origin planet sector. These origin planets would then become a priority for the Helldivers to liberate, as liberating these planets would eliminate that sub-faction in that region of the galaxy. There would be at least one origin planet for the incineration core on the bot front, the predator strain on the bug front, and whatever sub-faction may be introduced on the squid front. For the sake of variety, these origin planets would be randomized with each campaign cycle. Maybe the predator strain originates from 2 planets in different sectors on the bug front during one campaign cycle, then the next campaign cycle, the predator strain originates from only one planet in a completely different sector on the bug front. You may be wondering why I didn't mention the Jet Brigade or even the Gloom Bugs. I actually have some different ideas for them. Beyond specific planets being the origins of sub-factions, certain planets could also aid the Helldivers. There should be planets scattered throughout the galactic map that give galaxy-wide perks when they are liberated. Maybe a certain planet has an advanced mech production facility that shortens all mech cooldowns when it is captured. Maybe a certain Terminid planet can be used to farm E710 when it is liberated, allowing for faster Eagle rearm time. I gave these 2 examples because I think they are pretty realistic, but the possibilities are endless. There could be a planet that, when liberated, gives an additional charge to every Eagle stratagem, or provides a booster automatically to every squad on top of the ones they choose. This mechanic could go both ways as well. Maybe that planet that provides a shorter mech cooldown actually causes a surge in Factory Strider spawns when captured by the bots. Again, there are a ton of possibilities with a game mechanic like this, to where I could spend hours coming up with a perk for every planet. In order to not do that, I'll just say about every other sector should have a planet with a unique perk. Similarly to the sub-faction origin planets, these planets could be randomized with each campaign cycle as well. I could totally see groups of players rallying together to liberate the planets with their favorite perks, or to make a beeline for a sector containing an incineration core origin planet to save their fellow Helldivers from the most terrifying enemy of all. How about the DSS? I've never been a big fan of how the space station works, but that's its own video. The way it works currently would be fine for a cyclical campaign. The only thing I'd maybe consider doing is having it not be available at the start of a galactic war and have, say, 3 planets scattered around the galactic map that need to be liberated before it is unlocked. Maybe these 3 planets would have DSS production facilities or something like that. How about major orders? I think major orders could be preserved in some capacity with a cyclical campaign. There could be a pool of a bunch of canned major orders, with major orders being selected from this pool at random. What I mean by canned is that these major orders would be the same every time with the same requirements, same time to complete, and same rewards each time. The pool of canned major orders would contain around 20 different ones. This probably wouldn't get too repetitive, since only about 5 or so major orders would appear during each campaign. These major orders might be a bit more generic than the ones we have currently, but perhaps they could have a more direct impact on the Galactic War to compensate. Major orders would inevitably vary in difficulty and offer temporary galaxy-wide bonuses if completed before they expire. For example, a major order could come up that requires players to kill 5 million Impalers, and as a reward, the HMG emplacement becomes available to all Helldivers for a few days. Another major order could require players to collect a ton of samples, and the reward could be the experimental infusion booster automatically given to all squads for a few days. There would always be an active major order. When one major order expires, whether it was completed or not, a new major order replaces it. Determining the actual quantities for these major orders might be an issue. If Helldivers 2 loses players or gains players, the amount of stuff each major order calls for would have to adapt. I think this would be doable by having each major order scale with the amount of active players. I don't know what the exact algorithm would be for this, but I think it's pretty doable. Let's talk about enemy factions again. I have an idea I'm calling looming threats. While the Jet Brigade and Gloom Bugs are typically thought of as sub-factions, I think both stand out a bit over the Incineration Corps and Predator strain. Both the Jet Brigade and Gloom sort of loom over the galactic map, which is why I'm referring to them as looming threats. For the Illuminates' looming threat, I think they'd once again weaponize a black hole. Each faction's looming threat would work differently from the other factions, but they'd all have one thing in common. They're heading toward Super Earth. The Gloom Clouds, the massive Jet Brigade spaceships, and a black hole for the Illuminate all start at the outskirts of their faction's region of the galactic map. Immediately upon the start of a new galactic war, these looming threats start moving towards Super Earth, and the only way they can be stopped is by wiping out their corresponding faction entirely. These looming threats would act as a definitive end to the Galactic War, and would prevent any single campaign cycle from going on for too long. While the only way to eliminate these looming threats is by eliminating the corresponding faction, they can each be slowed by different means. These methods of slowing the looming threats isn't something I have a definitive answer for. There could be unique mission types that correspond to each faction's threat. Maybe this is where boss battles make their return from Helldivers 1. We could fight Gloom-enhanced Hive Lords to slow the spread of the Gloom, fight Illuminate Eyes to slow the Black Hole, and fight massive automaton mechs to slow the Jet Brigade. Each of these looming threats would also have a unique lingering effect on the galactic map. The Gloom is pretty straightforward. It would obscure a large portion of the map and limit the Helldivers' access to sectors on the Terminid front, as well as changing the conditions of planets shrouded in the gloom. The Jet Brigade could leave Jet Brigade troops on every planet it flies over, making those planets more challenging to liberate. The Illuminate Black Hole would destroy every planet it passes, taking those planets out of play until the next campaign cycle. This would be especially threatening when taking into account that many planets would otherwise provide perks if they hadn't been destroyed by the Illuminate. Within the Helldivers lore, each enemy faction has a home planet. These are often seen as the most critical planets to liberate in order to defeat each faction. Cyberstan is the most widely recognized of these planets, being the homeworld of the automatons and the cyborgs of Helldivers 1. The Terminids originate from Kepler Prime, and the Illuminate homeworld is a planet known as Squibai Shrine. Interestingly, both Kepler Prime and Squibai Shrine are absent from the Helldivers 2 galactic map. I think these homeworlds should play a critical role in the Galactic War, both the scripted one and any potential cyclical one. I have a feeling the developers have yet to reveal their hand as to what they have in mind for these homeworlds, but I think we will see something having to do with them in the future of the current scripted campaign. Since 2 of the 3 homeworlds aren't even on the map, I can't do a ton of speculation as to how they'd factor into a cyclical campaign. All I can say is that all 3 of these planets should be accessible and should be the final planets of each faction for the Helldivers to seize during a galactic war. Perhaps these planets could function similarly to how Super-Earth did during the Illuminate invasion. Each planet could be broken up into cities, colonies, or regions that must be captured independently to fully liberate the planet. A cyclical galactic war, paired with the additional elements I described in this video, has the potential to be a very engaging and fun experience for players. A cyclical campaign by nature is going to be repetitive. That being said, with enough arbitrary elements, each galactic war will play out differently from the last and give the player base a unique experience. Between a random handful of major orders and varying attributes given to random planets, a campaign cycle would include a different assortment of perks and penalties for the Helldivers to contend with, and a varying ultimate threat to Super-Earth, from the bugs to the bots to the squids. A cyclical galactic war would mean constantly evolving fronts for each faction, with sectors being lost and gained each week. Players would be fighting on various planets in a short time, rather than the current scripted galactic war where we often fight on the same handful of planets for weeks and many planets have still never been available to players. A cyclical campaign would be more fast-paced and instill a sense of urgency in players, with defeat being a tangible possibility. Every mission won or lost would have some significance, with a single dedicated squad being able to make a real impact on the war. The Helldivers community could be full of constant discussion as to what the best strategy is to beat the current galactic war, and which planet-related perks we should prioritize. I believe a cyclical campaign would not only be good for community cohesion and engagement, but also for the longevity of Helldivers 2. With a well-implemented cyclical campaign, the developers could focus less on crafting a single engaging storyline and put their attention towards other things, such as quality of life changes, more polished war bonds, or even put their attention on projects entirely separate of Helldivers 2 without the game getting stale quickly. While I would love to see a cyclical campaign within Helldivers 2, I'm not sure we will anytime soon, and we may never get one at all. I made this video to share some ideas on how a cyclical campaign could work within Helldivers 2, and to see if I'm not alone in my desire to see this brought to the game in the future. I'd love to hear others' thoughts and opinions on this topic. Do you enjoy the scripted campaign? Would you enjoy a cyclical campaign? Do you have any ideas of your own as to how something like this could be done with Helldivers 2? Let me know. Thanks for watching the video, and happy diving.